Hey family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. We're only the strongest roots see the light, brought to you by Botanica candles and more. And if you haven't had the opportunity, please like this video and subscribe. What's up, Phil?
Hey, don't forget to join our membership program too. We have so much extra content. You know, we're almost at 1,000 videos on this channel.
Yeah, I was noticing that. We're getting close to like 950, or are we over that mark?
Probably by the time this releases, we're probably over the 950 mark. But yeah, we are almost at 1,000 channel videos, which is a huge milestone. So I mean, definitely join the membership program. There's so much extra stuff. I mean, we're recording member-only shows today, live shows too. So,
sure, that's always exciting.
So don't miss out on that, man. But I'm doing well, man. How about you?
Good. And another big milestone, I think at this point when we're recording this, we're at about 74,000 subscribers.
Yeah, bro. Hopefully we'll get that 100K.
I want my button, Phil. We're gonna take that photo and we're gonna have that button up in that thing.
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Wait.
So what's top for today, bro?
Well, today is gonna be called routines. A lot of you guys reach out about, what should I be doing on a daily basis, Baba, especially when I wake up, or how frequently should I be taking care of my orishas? And, we see it in the comments, so we definitely wanted to come out with a video about that today. So before we get into the specific, aspects of what people have received and how to attend to them as far as frequency, we want to break it down to a human level. So when we talk about routines, the first routine that we have is obviously opening our eyes, right? And what is the first thing we as human beings should be doing as Ifa and Orisha practitioners when we wake up? So Ifa says that the first deity or the first energy that should receive our homage on a daily basis in the morning is Ori, which is, our third eye, chakra, however you want to refer to it. It's known as the seat of destiny. And it's the personal extension of Olodumare within each of us, right? So how do we do this? So the first thing we would do is, before we talk to anybody, before we say anything, ideally we look to the east, which is where the sun rises, being that Olorun is one of the manifestations of Olodumare as well. And kneeling, whether you have a rug or whatnot on the floor, you face that direction and you hold your head. And some people say you go back and forth. Some people just hold it statically. And you begin to, if you know any verses for Ori, you would say them there. If not, you just speak from the heart, being that, Ifa is beyond language. And you basically have a moment of gratitude. I mean, when you look at a lot of successful people, especially on social media now, where, everybody has a bit of advice for somebody, one common theme you see amongst, really, successful people, whether it's economically, socially, is they have a moment of gratitude in the morning. And this is kind of that for us, as far as gratitude and also recognition of a higher power. I think when we're able to start our day in thanks and then also recognize that there is something above us, I think it takes a lot of pressure off of us, understanding that we're already blessed, understanding that there's already great things that are happening to us even while we're sleeping, and that there is something above us that recognizes what we're going through and gives us something to aspire to, even though we'll never reach that precipice. So that is the first thing or routine that we want to incorporate. Some people would want to put shea butter or maybe efung or cacaria, or all these things are completely up to you at that point what you want to add. But, that is the base action, right? Saluting Ori, giving homage to Ori, and kneeling. Now, guys, once again, when we talk about routines, this is ideally, for someone with a young child, for someone who has to wake up at a certain time, we're not always going to be able to do this. So if you can't do this every day, it's okay. But if you're shooting for once a week, that's really awesome, to be honest with you. What did you do this morning, Phil? What are your routines like?
Okay, this is the fun part. So is this the first time Dominic wakes up in the morning, or the second time he wakes up in the morning? Because we got a little routine of him waking up at 5 a.m.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes he likes to punch my wife in the head.
Oh, gosh.
Says, wake up, I have to use the bathroom.
Oh, sure.
Right? So that happens pretty much every day.
Yeah.
But if it's like a regular day where he's sleeping, I'll wake up at 7:30.
Nice.
Do my three guys S thing, we do.
Yeah, sure.
S and S.
Yeah, the triple S. That's the distress call for sure.
Yeah, and then because I do work from home during the day.
Nice.
For the most part, I say my affirmations
Very nice.
Daily. I have them written all over my wall, and I have an altar, that's from my dad.
Very nice.
And I talk to him for a little bit, and then I check my emails and get started for the workday, man.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Yeah, with young kids or just kids in general, you never know how they're going to wake up that day. Like, for example, my daughter sometimes, I'll be laying down in my bed and I'll see like this black shadow kind of, floating across the room. And I'm terrified.
I just hear the Jaws music.
Yeah, because I'm terrified. I'm like, oh, man, they threw witchcraft at me again. But it's my daughter, and she'll wake up and, she'll hop in bed with us sometimes. And then to wake me up, she'll do like a Liu Kang fury kick to my head. And so I don't know if that's the thing with kids, it's like, oh, Ori, we're going to attack Ori this morning to get, our parents' attention. But, after that, if I'm able to wake up before she wakes up, usually 7-ish as well. And that's a really common theme as well for productive people. You just get so much done. So I'll usually have some water, right? Try to get some water in me just to move things around. And I'll try to get a walk in, and then from there, try to pick up the house as much as I can. Before I start making, everybody breakfast and things like that. I've always been very big on that. And, by that point, she's waking up, we're brushing teeth, we're using the bathroom, that's the normal life, without Ifa. But now, once someone, has appeased Ori, there are other things you can do before you leave the door. Some people will go to their bóveda or their spiritual table. You don't have to do the full cycle of prayers there. But some people will do an Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory Be, tap the table 3 times, maybe clean themselves with the water. It was a very popular one, especially when I didn't have anything else. The bóveda was huge. It's interesting you mentioned Dad and the altar you have, because that kind of is a bóveda to a certain degree, or a spiritual altar for the ancestors that we, gravitate the most towards.
Okay.
And then another one that's big is, Egun, like the Orisha of the ancestors, for people who have a full manifestation of Yoruba expression of ancestor altar and worship. You might spit some rum, you might spit some water, you might light a candle or 2. Usually with Egun, it's 2 candles. That's another option. Eshu is huge, you might spit some rum on him or just a hello and things like that, because if it's not on the day that you usually take care of him on a weekly basis, you can do a little quick thing. Some people like to spit rum or water, maybe light a candle for him, maybe a food offering, part of breakfast before they hit the door. For the Babalawos, a really big one is Orumila, right? So when you hear some of the habits of the old guys, they almost seem unattainable. But it was also a very different lifestyle as well. I mean, you always heard that, the Babalawo should be waking up at 4 a.m. every morning. He's supposed to salute Ifa and sweep his house, right? So the salutation to Ifa in the morning can be found in the Odu of Baba Ifa. And there's actually a verse there where it speaks of the quail and how the quail would wake up, and Orumila would wake up like the quail, and the call of the quail would alert him, and he would wake up. Because the interesting thing about the quail is the quail, when it's in partnership domestically, when it has a partner and it's guarding a nest, it always leaves one awake on guard watching the nest. So it was the same thing with Orumila, where Orumila, in the Odu of Eyobe, it says that he was going to be attacked by his enemies while he was sleeping, right? And they say at 4 a.m, the quail was the one who alerted him, and because of it, he was able to avoid death and defend himself. So it says that in that scripture, it's the ideal hour for the Babalawo to begin his day. And apart from that, till this day, we pay homage to the quail with that verse in Eyobe, which can be seen ceremonially from time to time. So the interesting thing about it is 4 a.m. made a lot of sense when we were back in Cuba or possibly Africa in antiquity, because, Babalawos really, all they would focus on is their Ifa practice. I mean, depending on what their home dynamic was, maybe there was a couple women in the house who would attend to the various functions within the home, whether it was cooking, cleaning, maintaining, the greatest prestige. The children, making sure they were up to par. And the awo, really his responsibilities were to Orumila. He'd wake up, he'd honor Ifa. It's very similar to the process of Oshe Ifa, when we talk about the daily routines, and that's really where Oshe Ifa comes from. The word Oshe means to work, and Ifa is Ifa, of course, where you notice that on that day, you're kind of going over the base deities that kind of make life possible. So you'll see that we'll take care of Eshu. We'll give Obi to Eshu. We'll give Obi to Ifa. I believe Aje is on that day as well, the deity of wealth and money, to help, get the week off or the day off to a very great start. But the Babalawo in antiquity, that's really all he would focus on. He'd wake up, he'd honor Ifa. The concept of sweeping the house can be found in the Odu of Obarashe, where, when you look at, I guess at least within, Afro-Caribbean culture, this was a huge practice. I mean, my grandmother was somebody that until the house was completely spotless, she wouldn't go to bed. So that means we wouldn't go to bed. You know what I'm saying? Dishes were washed, clothes were drying. You know what I'm saying? Like,
did you have the Saturday? The Saturday?
No, it was every day. It was every day. My grandmother, God bless her, she was just old school. She would just clean. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was the kind of thing, she really lived it. She was more of a bawalao than me sometimes, because I'll be frank with you, to wake up at 4 a.m. And I wake up at 4 a.m. because of my daughter, but, within 15 minutes, I'm back asleep sometimes. But she was more Ifa than me, I think, sometimes, because she was up at that time, 4 or 5-ish. I mean, dinner was done by like noon. You know what I'm saying? It was just simmering all day. So when you would have like the stewed beef or the oxtails, which I'm such a fan of, by the time you ate them around 6 or 7, those things were falling off the bone. So, you just see those habits, very old school habits. They had to have come from Africa.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the Odu of Obarashe, was where Orumila, went through a full day of Ifa practice. He might have had nebo, he had a sacrifice, he had a couple divinations, just a nice full day. And the Odu says that Orumila would go to bed or wake up without sweeping his home. And he noticed that as the week went on, he started feeling heavier spiritually. And for all the spiritual professionals who, whether you're an espiritista, whether you're Olorisha, Babalawo for sure, you start feeling it, when you're doing enough work and things like that, when you get to that point. And he was trying to figure out what was going on. So he performed divination where the Odu of Obarashe was revealed, where Ifa said he needed to perform sacrifice with a broom and the garbage within his house, or the dust, right? So Orumila, ironically, he would do his divinations at 4 a.m., and he started sweeping the house, and then that dust, he swept it out. In some versions, he used it to perform ebo and just continued the practice afterwards, right? But, neither here nor there, it gave him the result where he made it pretty mandatory for all of us, hey, clean your homes, dust your home, sweep your home, because the accumulation of spirituality happens there. So that's the reason why you would hear these old concepts of these men who would wake up and sweep their Ifa shrine or their home and things like that. All of that comes from Ifa in Africa for sure, and any of its manifestations in Afro-descendant culture. So that's another thing that you're going to hear of quite a bit. But, the Babalawo, ideally, before he hits the street, will salute Orumila, right? Pray his sign, maybe a moyuba, things like that to kind of wake Ifa up and get the energy flowing, because Ifa is one of those things where, just like all of the deities, we have our icons that live within the ajere or the sopera or the soup tureen or bowl, right? But the idea is to call that energy back. We always have to understand that Ifa is energy. It's not material. So you could have your Ifa, but if you don't invoke Ifa, attend Ifa, give it the ingredients that it requires, the spirituality and energy of Ifa, known as Ela, is not there. So that's why you'll see, someone may have all their things, but they're noticing things aren't going that great because they have them more as ornaments than as tools and as icons, which is what they really are.
What do you mean by that, though? What do you mean, like it's an ornament versus?
So what happens is, and you see this a lot, unfortunately, within the Lukumi culture, because we were so heavily influenced by European pomp, I like to say. Orisha became much aesthetically prettier or, digestible. So where in Africa, our Ifas or our Orishas lived in Iba or in Hikaras, or like the bowls, right, that we use. In the New World, they ended up in porcelain soup tureens, or soperas as they're known. Okay. So now, mind you, there is an Odu where this occurred, which was in Osaure or Osalawo, where Orumila chose to be in a porcelain receptacle, to protect himself. When the diaspora happened, Ifa didn't want to be open. He didn't want to be revealed because not everybody, he didn't recognize everybody. He didn't know everybody. So he wanted to be protected somehow. So being that there were no other resources, or they didn't know where the Hikara was at that moment, they ended up putting him in the sopera, because the Orishas are actually known as Iba Mole, which means Iba, recipient, or the bowl, Imole, which means the light, where it says the light lived within the bowl. That's why the orishas lived within bowls in Africa, whether it was made out of wood or whether it was made out of, the gourd fruit, as it's known, cut in half. So that's what I mean is, when we got to the New World, being that, we had other responsibilities and, a lot of things now start going on where we have bills and, all these other things, we don't have necessarily as much time at that moment to do an Oshe Ifa or to wake up and attend to Ifa or all of these different things. There's so many, capitalism is fabulous, but it provides a lot of constraints on time because, when you talk about, especially here in the United States, all we do is work. We wake up, we're thinking about work. Before we go to bed, we're thinking about work, especially now with the way interest rates are and, elections coming up and then, the effects that COVID had on us. Everybody's just thinking about survival, with the way economically we're progressing as a nation. So when you have those kind of pressures and you have those kind of responsibilities now without the leeway of having a moment to kind of digest everything, we might not be able to wake up at 4 a.m. We might not be able to even say goodbye to Ifa before we leave the house. That doesn't mean we're bad practitioners, but we do have to always hold ourselves accountable and find the time to make that time somehow.
That was my biggest question, honestly, because we all have extremely busy lives.
Yeah.
And, would the Orishas be upset if we didn't do what we needed to do at 7 a.m. every single day? What if we did it the next day?
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, when I give eshu to people, they're like, Padrino, I'm going to wake up at, 4 a.m. every morning on Monday and take care of eshu and this, that, and the third. And I'm like, everybody starts with great intentions. That sounds wonderfully idealistic and fantastic. But if you're unable to do that, take care of them at least once a week, any day that you can. Not everybody's off on Monday. And another thing is Monday was instituted in the New World because it's seen as the beginning of the week, right? But you can take care of eshu any day of the week. In Yoruba land, the spiritual week is a 4-day week known as the Oshe. So it really doesn't matter as long as you have that level of frequency. But the Orishas don't get mad. I've said this over and over again. They're beyond those kind of emotions. What there are repercussions based on nature and us being in disalignment with those energies. So, for example, you might not take care of eshu for 3 months, right? And then something negative happens. The Western-minded person, the first thing they're going to think is, oh, I'm being punished. And this comes from oppression from Western religious views, Abrahamic faiths, we're going to go to hell if we don't do the right thing, or he is an angry and jealous God, we're going to be punished. Africa didn't have any of those concepts. It's just repercussions. So, for example, instead of thinking that, maybe Eshu was trying to prevent that from happening to you, but he didn't have his red palm oil, you didn't give him no corn, and he's like, I don't have the tools to help you. So at some point, you kind of have to come back. That's why certain orishas have certain frequencies as far as time versus others. So for the morning routine, before we delve into, the different aspects as far as what people have and don't have, at least for the Ifa practitioner, Babalawo, especially the Babalawo, you might want to say hello to Orula, pray your sign, have a quick conversation before you hit the door, at least once a week. Because that's kind of our guy, But other than that, at that point, it really comes down to people's odus. So, for example, you might have an odu that says, hey, every time you leave the front door, make sure you wipe your feet 3 times before you leave on that rug. Or, spit water out the front door and spit rum out the front door. Or, put some red palm oil on your head, or everybody has little nuances and little things based on their sign. But what I've mentioned is basically usually the regular stuff you can do before leaving the door. Another thing for the Olorisha priest, maybe a little invocation to your guardian Orisha, the one you're initiated into. Like, let's say you're a child of Obatala, you go in front of Obatala, you can ring the agogo or the bells. I knew old santeros that every morning they would wake up and ring everybody's instrument. They had some time on their hands, though, but it was still a beautiful process. They'd start with eshu and work their way up all the way to their guardian orisha. So, that's another option as well, to kind of wake the house up, cleanse the air. When we read the Odu Babao Beshe, it says the instruments of orisha cleansed the air. So when we look at that Pataki, basically what occurred is Obeshe once again noticed that the energy in his house was a little dead. It was a little bland. It sounded like a TV with a black screen on, whatever that noise is, that back
fuzzy.
There. Exactly. He was like, this is spiritually dead. I'm not feeling my ancestors, no energy, my Orishas, my Ifa. And he did divination where Oromila told him to perform a bow with instruments or the materials he ultimately used to create instruments. So from that, the bell of Oshun was born. The bell of Obadala was born. Shango's Ashere was born. Elegua's Maraca. Oya used the vaina, which is from the flamboyant tree, which is the pod that has the seeds that shake. And all of the Orishas started identifying the musical instruments from a handheld standpoint that they would use to invoke. Like Orumila had the Iroke, which is the Ifa bell. And he started playing all these things, and the Orisha's energy started returning to his home. And with it came happiness, prosperity, and longevity, and the intelligence to know how to use all of them. So that's why that is a practice as well, which I used to see all the time when I used to go to like my madrina's house and things like that. Sometimes you'd walk in, the coffee was on, and you'd hear, Yemaya's maraca going, and I'm like, all right, she's up, So I used to see all of these routines, and, it's just good habits. It keeps you accountable with them, and it keeps that relationship alive. You never want to be in a position with your orishas where you feel distant from them or you feel cold, You got to touch them. You got to give them their ingredients, etc. And those are some of the things you can do on a daily morning basis before you hit the door. So.
Okay.
Now going up the ladder, let's say somebody who has Eshu, right? When we're talking about routines in general, and we're going to actually come out with a video on this of me showing you guys how to take care of Eshu and the warriors. It's coming soon. That way you can have a physical idea of, how and what, because a lot of the people that arrive to us, everybody has different situations, but some of them might have not had the opportunity to learn how to take care of things like Eshu and the warriors before, possibly them and their elders kind of lost contact or, were distanced. So with someone who has Eshu, we spoke about what you could possibly do daily, but on a weekly process or sequence, you definitely want to take care of Eshu once a week, right? And why is this? Because Eshu is a little bit different. Eshu doesn't get held to the same standards as everyone else. He's a glutton. He's somebody that, he's very, I won't say self-conscious, but the way his behavior seems like self-consciousness because he wants attention. He wants to feel like he's taken into account because there's so many Odus, such as the Odu of Odi Owonring or Odi Moni, where people forgot Eshu was a king. So he always had that complex like, hey, don't forget about me or don't make me feel like you've forgotten about me. So with Eshu, that's why we have to take care of him on a weekly basis because technically the Odu of Eyobe says that we should be feeding Eshu a rooster every day. That's just his vibe. That's
every day.
Every day. Like he feels like he deserves that. And
even
he really
in modern,
does.
Even in modern day time.
Technically, even in modern day. Now, this is where the caveat comes in and how we kind of get around that. So Orumila and the Odu of Eyobe, Eshu was asking him for a rooster every day, and when Orumila had the time and the funds, the prosperity was coming in. He's like, yeah, I'll give you a rooster a day. But there were times when he's like, yo, I'm not gonna be able to give you a rooster a day. And Eshu was like, well, I'm hungry. So how are you going to be able to satisfy me as if you were giving me a rooster without giving it to me? And through Eyobe, divination, etc., they were able to identify red palm oil. And the red palm oil was given to Eshu, and Eshu was satisfied. He's like, I'll hold off, right? But this will only work for a year. So, for example, Orumila fed Eshu, let's say, January 1st, right? Mm-hmm. And he gave him red palm oil the rest of the year. You still got to feed Eshu again the next January 1st. So from Eyobe is where that weekly annual routine with Eshu comes up, where Eshu technically wants a rooster every day, right? But we can't do that. And he understands to a certain degree as long as he's satisfied. So in the meantime, you give him red palm oil. But he's like, hey, man, the red palm oil gets old after a while. I need my rooster once a year, at least. And if you give a goat, even better. So that's really the base routine when it comes to Eshu. So that's why he has to be taken care of on a more frequent basis than any other deity. Even Egungun, Eshu gets taken care of even before our ancestors, technically. Because when we look, especially like within Isese practice as opposed to Lukumi practice, Lukumi is very Egun-centric, where every ceremony starts with an offering to Egungun, or the ancestors, where in Africa, everything starts with Eshu, right? Now, the way we kind of get around that is the Odu Baba Ifa says there's Eshus or spiritualities of Eshu around Egungun when he eats. And one of them is Ashikwelu, and the other one is Eshu Bode, right? Which both can be found in Baba Ifa. So that's where we kind of get around that. But over there, everything's Eshu, right? physically, not just energetically. So with Eshu, that's pretty much why we do them on a weekly basis with the red palm oil, because red palm oil in that Odu replaced blood.
Okay.
So when you look at red palm oil, when it's very, very like melted or the fat has separated from the liquid or the oil aspect, when that stuff comes out, it's like crimson, and it pours in a way where when it's kind of like, blood, unfortunately for anybody that's played sports or, gone through situations, when blood gets in clothing, it's very difficult to get out.
Yeah.
Right?
I think have to use like soda or something.
Yes, sir. Just like red palm oil. But the crazy thing about red palm oil is you really never get it out. That stuff stains in a way where, it's kind of there. Like, if you look at people who cook with it consistently, their pots and their cookware have like a dye almost, It's great stuff, but it stains, And it had that effect, and that's why Eshu said, I'll accept this. And that's why you're only supposed to put red palm oil on Eshu when he's dry, right? Because you don't want him caked up with it either. At least in the Lukumi side. The African Eshus, like, they have no face. You cake the red palm oil, no problem. And, they look like a real mess. A beautiful mess, but a mess nonetheless, right? So that's with Eshu. That's why he gets taken care of so frequently. Now, some people will ask me, they'll be like, Baba, well, what about Ogun and Oshosi? Who really form the collective of the warriors, right? Because technically Osung isn't part of the warriors. He kind of got grandfathered in there because the warriors, they tricked him into, giving them Obatala's goat, which is another story. We're coming out with a podcast on Osung on itself very soon. But when we talk about these three guys, it's like, well, what do I give to Ogun and Oshosi? Well, here's the thing. Just to be frank with you, being a Botanica owner, the materials that are used to make the tools now aren't the same materials that were used to make the tools back then. Like, if you look at a set of warriors before 2000, it was like real iron. Like, it was, there were still babalaos and like blacksmiths and things, like, especially like in Hialeah. You'd see it in New York, like in the Bronx. Like, you'd see guys that really knew how to make tools out of iron, and they would weld and things like that. Like, the old school tools are awesome. They're so rustic. But the new ones, they're made out of, maybe 1% iron, and the rest is like 99% aluminum. So when you rub the red palm oil on the tools of Ogun and things like that, it doesn't absorb like it used to. Like, the tools before used to actually eat the red palm oil. So what I tell people now is, unless Ogun eats like a blood sacrifice, right, or an animal, there's really no reason to be putting red palm oil on him consistently, because what you're going to have is just a mess. It's just going to be full of red palm oil by the end of the year, whenever those guys eat as a collective. So what I tell them, offer red palm oil once a year, right? And, you could check every 3 to 4 months. If it's dry, then add it. But it's very rare because, like, the iron is porous, and then the new way it's kind of glazed and things like that and sealed, it doesn't absorb it. So you have to check on a case-by-case basis. Another thing that should be offered to Eshu on a weekly basis is obviously rum or any type of alcohol. Like, if you're a cognac guy, you can put some cognac on them. If you're a vodka, if you like vodka, ladies, you can put some vodka. Whatever it is, Eshu doesn't care. He'll get twisted off of anything, So you can pour or spit on him. But another thing that a lot of people don't put, which is huge, is water. So what happened is I think there was a little bit too much influence from, disciplines such as Mayombe and things like that, where certain prendas and things like that, or gangas, they don't offer water, right? And there's even Odus in Ifa that speak of water being taboo for certain deities in certain instances, like Okanafung speaks of this. But when it comes to Eshu, you want to offer water. To the Orishas in general, you want to offer water. That's in the Odu of Eyobe, where Oshun saved the world by, starting as the peacock and ending up as the vulture in Olodumare's house, nearly dying. She cried for, Olodumare to release the rains because he was angry at humanity because of the way they were conducting themselves. And her tears ended up becoming the rain. So that's why, water is so important as well. That's why, for those that know the Isese verse that starts like this, alolomi, atiwaye gunugun, which basically speaks of the water coming down via the gunugun, which was the vulture. And then the other one was Osakuleya, where Ogun would constantly eat blood and blood and blood, and he became vicious, where they had to offer him water for him to be able to relax. So water is a very important aspect to, Orisha offerings in general. Now, some people might say, hey, what about Baba Luaye, the sores, etc.? Get some coconut water then. But, at the end of the day, water is water, So that's another very key aspect. And then with Eshu, the food offering. Technically red palm oil is a food offering to Eshu, but we don't want to be cheap. So, there's so many things you could offer Eshu. I'll never forget one of the best weeks of my life. I offered him a Coca-Cola and a slice of pizza. It was amazing. But the more conventional things, smoked rat, like hutia or anything, smoked fish, usually in powder form, toasted corn. All of these are symbols of prosperity, like the Odu Babai Wodi Meji says. And then the corn is in Odus like Ochelezo and Oturarico, etc. But different types of fruits. The guayaba fruit seems to be the most popular for Eshu, and it's probably because it has a nice, lush red flesh inside. They're delicious. Usually you can do 3 of those. Various types of fruit. Eshu's only taboo is black palm oil, which is known as adi, or black palm kernel oil, which most people probably won't interact with unless they're babalawos anyway.
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, right.
Is that black seed oil, or you said black palm oil?
When you look at the fruit from the oil palm, it has a outer red coating, right, which is the fruit part, right, and that's what gets pressed into red palm oil, right. Now within that are the sacred seeds of iking, and within the iking is a nut, and that nut gets pressed and it creates black palm kernel oil. And the reason it's black is because it comes out black, and it's the kernel of the palm fruit. Odumila's not a fan of this, just like Eshu's not a huge fan of this, because technically, when this occurs, Iking is being destroyed, our central icon. So they're not a huge fan of that. They don't want to kind of be reminded, a sacred seed was destroyed. So they don't really consume this. But a deity that does is Ogun and Oshosi. Being that they live together, and the Odu of Ogunda Dio was where Orumila married red palm oil, which was the fruit outside, and Ogun married Adi, which was the black palm oil that was produced from the kernel. That's why it's known as Ogunda Dio, which means Ogun created with Adi, because they were, husband and wife, and, they procreated. So for Ogun, it's not a taboo. But I still don't recommend overindulging in this, but if you're not a Bawalao, because there's certain aspects of that ingredient that you have to be very careful with, because mishandled, it can bring really catastrophic results, right? And most people won't ever even see it. They won't even know they're looking at it. But that's pretty much Eshu, and then apart from that, a candle. It could be debatable, because some people are like, Eshu is the darkness, and Oyekun Meji, do we really have to put candles? The Odu of Eyobe says, we should put a candle in front of every Orisha. Babao Wani Mosung or Osameji speaks of this as well. It's really up to you and your habits, but it doesn't hurt at the end of the day.
Does color matter for a candle?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking, it doesn't matter. But, if you want to kind of vibrate the energy that has to do with the Orisha you're working with, ideally you want to get one that kind of resonates with that. So, for example, when we talk about Eshu, the big colors are red and black, right? Red representing life, black representing, the left, as it's known, or the darkness that Eshu rules over. So usually a red and black candle or an all red candle. I'm not a fan of all black candles. You can do it, but I think that's a little too much darkness, just to, be frank. Another one that you could use is a white and black candle based off of the path of Eshu Afra, which is very well known. If you can find a red, white, and black candle, some people make their own candles. There's this place called Botanica Candles and More. They sell them as well. But there's really great options. Maybe you want to use a scented option. You want to get creative. Those are pretty much the colorways for Eshu, right? And at that point, it's done. So I'm really excited about us coming out with that episode soon. But that's so you guys understand routines. When it comes to the initiates of people who have received Eshu and the warriors, as they are known, that's pretty much what you can do on a weekly basis, for sure.
Nice.
So another really entry-level situation would be someone who has Hand of Ifa, right? When it comes to Orumela, there's 2 very distinct schools, right? You have Isese, which speaks of Oshe Ifa, that you should take care of Ifa every 4 days, which is great habits. I'm not knocking that at all. I think that's wonderful. For the people that have the time and are able to make the time, most importantly, because everybody has time, but can you make the time, I think is the more important, point. I think that's awesome, right? But then again, you have other schools or other lifestyles where maybe every 4 days really is impossible, That's why within the Odu of Eyobe, it says that the spirituality of Ifa tends to come back every 41 days, which basically translates to once a month. That's why in the New World or in the Lukumi practice, we say, hey, make sure you at least take care of Orumila once a month. That's why he's a little more frequent than the other Orishas, right? Like I said, in the Odu of Ogundadio, the most important ingredient that Orumila ever received was that his wife produced, which was epo, right? Or the red palm fruit oil, right? Which we spoke of just now. And why do we offer this to Orumila is because it represents the feminine reproductive fluids as referring to menses, right? Orumila was a huge fan of women, and because of it, he always wanted to be in contact with her because she was fertile, she was gregarious, she was loving, and he always wanted to be consumed by her, like all happy men are by their wives. And, that's why we offer red palm oil as a base ingredient there. With that video, I'm not going to show how to take care of Orumila simply because I believe that anything that is within a closed receptacle, I don't feel comfortable, whether things are consecrated or not consecrated, taking care of them on camera. But that is something, as far as coaching, we'd be very willing to provide. But the one that we're definitely going to come out with is Eshu, because he's kind of exposed. It's like the Odu Owani Tanchela says, Eshu was always in the nude. And that's because he's out there. And then Ogunga no Shosi, I mean, you can't help but see what's in there. So I don't feel uncomfortable about that. But Orumila, I don't like exposing him like that. But, red palm oil, that's pretty public knowledge, is the base offering to Ifa for that reason. But as far as routines, definitely taking care of Orumila at least once a month. If you want to do it more, you definitely can. As far as taboos, we spoke about the black palm kernel oil. He never wanted to interact with her again because she was unfaithful to him with his brother Ogun. That's why Ogun stayed with her, and Orumila stayed with Ogun's wife, who was Epo. And you have that. As far as food offerings for Ifa, I've heard so many different things. I've heard Orumila is nothing short of a gentleman. So I remember when I received him, they told me he likes fine dark chocolate. He likes red wine that can be found in the Oduve Dibere. It was really funny. They said shrimp fried rice, and Lord knows everybody loves it. Yeah. So that's something that I've offered to him quite a bit, and the reason being is because Orumila was a fan of seafood, but the only seafood that he was able to actually consume was the shrimp because the octopus saved his life, the calamari or the squid, saved his life, the crab saved his life. So he's like, I love, seafood. What can I eat? And then the only thing that was left for him was, the snapper or the fish and the shrimp, the snappers in, like Eyobe, Iworiobere, where he ate it, and in Owani he ate it. So, he loves seafood, at least the ones that aren't taboo for him, because the octopus, squid, and the crab became his friends, The squid in Ochetura and the octopus and the crab in Babao Turameji. Eyobe speaks of it as well. So, those are options as well. He loves fruits. I noticed that the fruits he likes the most are kind of like the citrusy vitamin C ones. So things like mangoes. He's a big fan of pumpkin due to his relationship with Oshun. A lot of the fruits that he likes are ironically the fruits that Oshun likes. He likes cantaloupe, oranges. That's in the Odu of Eyobe, where they made the first opele out of the orange skin. All those different things. And it's ironic because the other day, and you see a lot, we really don't like to get involved in the TikTok nonsense. But, like I said, not to go back to past things, if we're in the ring together, something's going to happen. So, but one thing I noticed is that someone was actually doing an offering the other day, and they were criticizing somebody because they had offered grapes to Orula, right? Now, this is an old school concept, which I never really understood. Some people say that Orumila used the grapes to save his life. That's why, we can't give it to him or, whatever. Or that the old school Babalaos couldn't drink wine, which I never understood or heard whatsoever a reasoning for. This is just people repeating things that they might have heard erroneously. But the same person that was criticizing somebody for offering grapes was, making like a ceviche for Orula with an octopus in it. So at the end of the day, it's neither here nor there to me, but, it's just interesting, people may delve into criticizing others when they might be doing things incorrectly as well because they haven't studied. So, it's very important to understand the taboos of these different energies so that we get the best results because they want to give us the best results. But for example, if you're giving me something I'm allergic to, I can't benefit you in any way because you're killing me or,
exactly.
you're making me, the vibration is not going to be coherent. So, that with Orumila, it's very important to know that. I've heard almonds, ironically, all types of Nigerian food, by the way. Egusi, eko, amala, the eja or the fish, efo or the vegetables, salad, all those things. Emu, Orumila loves all of that, keep it rustic. But yeah, those are some of the offerings. And then with Orumila, it's 2 candles, right? Due to the Meji concept that manifested in Eyobe, Orumila likes things in pairs. Now, that doesn't mean when you put a piece of cake to Orula that you have to cut the cake in half and put it in 2 separate plates. But, for example, if you're going to give him a lobster tail, if you're going to give it to him whole, at that point you got to give him 2. Better just chop it up and, provide it that way. But green and yellow is Orumila's colors. In Africa, it's green and brown. But you can do any combinations of those. Like if you want to do 2 all yellow, 2 all green, green and yellow. They also have the mixed options. You have all of these different options, So, but I think, Phil, this is going to end up being a part 2, man, because we never got to the Orisha routines.
You're going to have to have a part 2, a part 3. This needs to be an ongoing series, because everybody's routines are different. I think a lot of people can definitely benefit from these because even me as just like I don't even know what you call an outsider, but
well, I hate to use that term because it's kind of like mudblood in
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, but it's known as aleyo, which means visitor. But but
yeah, I mean, we can even use these practices for our daily lives.
Absolutely, and I really feel like ultimately Ifa being one of the first ways of life, first spiritualities that have been identified is a reiteration that success comes through routines, discipline, and organization, right? And I think when we have those things and we take into account and accept that life is repetitive and we have these very small moments of grandeur that really form memories, I think if we can get over the idea that something's boring doing it every day, I think we're going to accomplish great things because that was Orumila's whole spiel. Every day, same thing. And it really took him to where he is today. And, we could try to emulate that and get very great results from it.
There's a saying, I think it's 21 days to create a habit?
Yo, and that's real, bro. Like with food and everything or working out, it's so scary because that first week you just want to die. Mm-hmm. But then you get a little scared because by the 3rd week you're like, yo, I'm not as hungry as I used to be, or this doesn't hurt as much as it is. It's those first 3 weeks, and ironically, the number 21 belongs to Eshu, and Eshu and Oyeku Meji is always trying to distract people on the path to greatness. So it's ironic when you reach his threshold, you're able to make it a habit and assimilate that new phase of life. So that is ironic.
Well, speaking of habits, I do want to talk about people who have a fabulous habit of being a member.
Eso. Oh, I like this. Yeah. This is cigar music for sure.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. So, guys, as we wrap this show up, this is the time where we get to shout out the members of the channel. We've got,
you guys.
There's 75,000 subscribers, but we have a membership platform to where it's exclusive and you get different perks for each different tier you select. And one of the perks is we're going to give you guys a shout out. So
here we go.
The VIPs.
Vips.
We have Anna Marrero.
Anna, thank you.
We have Lesedi Gutierrez.
Shout out to the members.
We got Tiffany Nicole.
Thank you, Tiff.
Joe Smith.
Joe.
And shout out to the super fans. We got Andrew Casanova.
Thank you, Andrew.
Diego Ray.
What's up, Diego?
And shout out to Kenya Hutton with 17 months
OG.
straight.
Shout out to Kenya. Thank you so much. You're amazing. To all the OGs, you're fabulous.
And Lovely K with 16 months. Shout out.
Gosh.
So wow, they're from the very, very beginning.
You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. And they're getting all the benefits from the membership program, a bunch of exclusive videos. We just came out with some on paths of Yemaya, like Okute and Mayelewo. If you guys know anybody that can benefit from the group, please let them know about it so they can go ahead and indulge and learn and grow with us. Couple closing thoughts before we go ahead and disconnect. BotanicaCandlesandMore.com is up and running for all services and products we do ship. If you aren't able to catch the podcast via video on YouTube, we're on all major platforms, so you can listen to us while you drive, possibly, or work out. Guys, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Big thank you from all of us here at Our Roots Podcast. And until next time, see the light.